Hey y'all, happy Thursday. Welcome to our Armchair Botanist Forum. It's our last forum of the year. We're gonna wait just a minute or two until we get a few more people to join us, and we're excited to get started. So hang tight just for a second. Okay, thank you for your patience, y'all. My name is Ashley Bales. I'm the collections manager for the herbarium here at the Botanical Research Institute of Texas at the Fort Worth Botanic Garden. And it's my pleasure to introduce Craig Meyer. He is one of our new employees working on our All Asia NSF TCN grant. So I'm really excited to hear what Craig has uncovered as he's gone through and digitized, I think well over 7,000 images now. So Craig, whenever you're ready, you can take it away.
Okay, great. Thanks. Can everybody hear me? Fantastic. Okay, so to get started, the title of this talk is the All Asia TCN, Thematic Collection Network, The People Behind the Plants. The All Asia TCN is an NSF grant-funded effort to digitize plant specimens from Asia. And there is a lot of interesting stuff. And while I want to talk about the grant and talk about what we're doing and talk about why that matters, I also want to cover some of the history and the characters that we blunder into during this process. So we're going to talk about some of the oddities of history that we run into. And I would like to just give a quick thank you for letting me spend the time to run down some of the weirder stuff that I find here. Also, thanks to you to Ashley and Jess. I appreciate all the help that I get from you on a near daily basis, including moving specimens around and telling me where the post-it notes are. And also a very big thank you to a different Jess Price, who took the utilitarian Spartan guts of this presentation and made the slides look a lot better and a lot more visually interesting. So first thing, Armchair Botanist. Okay, so what is this? What are we doing here? This is a collaboration between botanists and museum pros and students and you. It's a casual space to talk about what we're up to. So we think this stuff is interesting, and we suspect that you will too. So when we talk about Asia, what do we mean by that? Okay, so the grant that we have defines Asia as northern Russia south to New Guinea, and from Afghanistan east to Japan. In practice, though, the country list that we're working with also includes Asia Minor in Turkey and the Middle East, so Iraq, Iran, and fortunately for this talk, Israel. The grant is also written to pay special attention to the Himalaya Hungduan region and Southeast Asia. Both of those areas have high biodiversity and a lot of unique adaptations. In terms of the Himalayas, there's a region with a huge variety of geology and climate and altitude, and this really complex topography. Obviously the big thing there is elevation. As you and I will probably start having trouble breathing around 8,000 feet. And generally, once you're above 16,000 feet of elevation, you are in permanent ice and rock, no plants. But their vascular plants have been found as high as 20,000 feet. That's ridiculous. As far as Southeast Asia, there's an incredible biodiversity there. I am not a botanist, but and this is not an official botanical description, but there are an awful lot of super weird plants that look like they're from space. As far as Asia, why Asia? Well, the continent is huge. The continent spans Siberia to Papua New Guinea. It has temperate to tropical, and it has both the highest and the lowest elevations on Earth. Highest Everest, and the lowest is the Dead Sea at minus 1,385 feet. It covers an incredible array of habitats. Now, if you look over on the right, that's a map, it's a heat map of specimen location. Red is more specimens, white is fewer. The US is pretty well represented, as is Australia and Scandinavia, but Asia as a whole isn't. If you didn't know any better, you'd think it was an ice sheet like Greenland or a desert like the Sahara. Out of the 54 million records in IDIC-Bio, only 4.5% of them are from Asia. So as far as digitizing, Asia is very substantially underrepresented. So first, let's talk a little bit about the methodology. So the methodology is first collect the sample in the field, and then the sample is pressed and preserved. With the exception of some of the Philippine stuff, this has largely been done. And what my job is to play catch up. The next step, we hire some handsome guy to take a picture of it. And then we parse out the label data and put it into a searchable database. Next, we use that label data to put a dot on a map. And then finally, the whole thing is put online for research. So in this talk, I'm going to be talking a little bit about each one of those steps. I'm going to show a sample label and then talk about who collected that plant and how that is relevant to a specific stage of our workflow. So the first thing we'll talk about is imaging with Imagen. The first step is we image the samples that have been mounted. So let's talk about Imagen coming in here. So the pictures that you're looking at here is on the left, it's a self-portrait from 1909. She's 26 years old. And the picture on the right is her on Johnny Carson in 1976. She's 93 years old. She was born in Portland, Oregon in 1883, and she bought her first camera mail order. When she went to college, she got a chemistry degree, and she paid for her tuition by photographing plants for the botany department. In 1913, she wrote a manifesto called Photography as a Profession for Women, where she argued that women were just as capable as men in doing the then incredibly laborious and physically intensive process of taking and developing photographs. In the 20s, she founded the California Horticultural Society, and she did in-depth studies on the magnolia flower for 2 years. Now, when we talk about, what did she photograph? Well, I'm going to give you a great quote from her. I photograph anything that can be exposed to light. The reason during the 20s that I photographed plants was that I had 3 children under the age of 4 to take care of, so I was cooped up. I had a garden available, and I photographed them indoors. Later, when I was free, I did other things. She is known for botany, portraiture, particularly celebrities without makeup, published in Vanity Fair, industrial landscapes. She was an advocate of pure and straight photography, so she wanted to do finely detailed and, quote, not being phony. As far as our Imogen, aka Station 5, she was born in Harvard. She spent time in Colorado, but I like to think that she was perfected here at BRIT. I'd also like to give a big thank you to Jason, whose knowledge of imaging and light boxes has been utterly critical to getting the station up and running. Our Imogen's first camera and only camera is a Canon EOS R5. She is made of an adjustable height desk with a 350-pound max weight and around 35 feet of 1-inch extruded aluminum. This is one of the first pictures that she took here at BRIT on November 3rd, 2013. I also want to take a minute to thank some of the volunteers that help with the physical act of imaging these specimens. We have literally tens of thousands to get through, and volunteer time makes that possible. So Eugene and Carrie, Aaron and Sharon, thanks so much for barcoding and getting these samples in order. This is our first Eugene that we will talk about. Our next Eugene is Eugene Bourgeau. So the next step after imaging is to transcribe that data from the image into a searchable database. So the first label, we'll look at Eugene Bourgeot in a sample from Turkey in 1860. There's a few things to notice here. Plantae Lycia, that is a region in southwestern Turkey. It's right on the Mediterranean. And note that we have the scientific name here. But when we get to the description, he's actually using botanical Latin. So it is in Arvis ad basem montis ac dag. Translates to in the uncultivated fields at the base of the mountain, ac dag. That's July 5th, 1860. When we actually transcribe that information into a database, into some way of it, we get you can see that we have the unique ID, collector, date, both in a standardized format as well as in verbatim. We also have the country and the location. Note that when we talk about the location and the locality, right down here, we put in the verbatim as well as the translation. This is important. We want that original to be available, and as well as our best efforts at translation in English. That'll become especially important later. As far as who was Eugene Bourgeot? He was born in France, and we don't know a whole lot about him other than we know that he developed an interest in plants when he was taking care of his family herds as a kid. He started working in the botanical garden in Lyon, but he relocated to Paris to work as a herbarium assistant. In 1845, he went off to collect plants in the Canary Islands, in Spain, North Africa. Sir William Jackson Hooker referred to him as the Prince of Botanical Collectors and requested him on the Palliser expedition, which was a British government-funded effort to evaluate the feasibility of settlement in Canada. But he had to leave early, though, because he had a commission to go to Turkey. He was commissioned to go to Turkey, and he actually went there twice. He went first to Lycia and later into the Pontic Mountains in 1861. He went on to collect in Spain and Mexico, in Greece, and for his efforts, he was made a legionnaire. And I don't know about the first photo, but I know the second one is dated from 1864, where he very clearly looks better with a beard. Interestingly, he is also known as a horrible speller. Hilariously, both his Wikipedia page and his official Government of Canada biography mention his terrible speller and grammar, or his terrible grammar and spelling. I think that's kind of rough that is your legacy. But Bourgeot was a French speaker writing in Latin. So for it to be accessible to modern users, we have to translate it to make it searchable. The necessity for translation into English is a good transition into talking about some of the unique challenges of working in Asia. Next thing we'll talk about is transcription and some of the historical context with J.E. Dinsmore. Since we're working in Asia, we have some unique challenges that transcription in domestic collections here in the US just don't face. And they can be broadly divided into two problems: language and history. First, we'll talk about language. We're lucky in that most of our specimen labels are in English. There are, however, a few in Chinese or Russian and some in Japanese, and that creates a couple of problems. Machine translation can get us started, but it's very limited. It struggles with handwriting, for instance. We're also not that confident that it's capturing the full nuance of that text. We are extremely fortunate that we have a couple of Chinese students at TCU that are volunteering with us. So big thanks to Grant and Madison. We are thrilled to be working with you. We're going to have a Russian speaker who will be working with us soon. Japanese is still a gap, so if anybody speaks Japanese, let us know. The second unique problem that we face is history. Asia is a big place, and it is a dynamic place. Lots of stuff has changed over the 160-year history of our specimens. Working with this stuff requires at least some knowledge of history and a willingness to solve some puzzles. So we'll go first in order. Over on the right, we have a sample collected in Kashmir in 1940. And at the time, Kashmir was in colonial India. Now, as we speak right now, Pakistan controls the northern portion, India controls the central and southern portion, And the People's Republic of China controls the northeastern portion. Nobody really has formally recognized the accession of anything and refers to everybody else as that region is occupied. Okay, I have the sample. What country is it in? Similarly, if we run into a specimen collected in Crimea, what country does that belong to? Russia annexed that country from Ukraine in 2014. Or what about something from South Ossetia? Do we put that country as Georgia, or do we call it the South Ossetia Autonomous Republic, which only a handful of countries recognize? So the political stance of the stuff is kind of a challenge to work with sometimes. Further back in history, we have some samples from the Soviet Union. Soviet satellites on the labels are often referred to as the Soviet Socialist Republic of Uzbekistan or the Soviet Socialist Republic of Turkmenistan in the notes, but that's not always clear. Sometimes all we really have is the detailed location, and we don't have a country. It's just listed as the Soviet Union, which was a real big place. Moving back to the Chinese Civil War, the Chinese Civil War chased Chiang Kai-shek and the KMT off of mainland China to Taiwan in 1949. And now we are left with two entities, the People's Republic of China on the mainland and the Republic of China in Taiwan. Now, the PRC contends that Taiwan is a province of China, and Taiwan contends that it, in fact, is the real China. So what country is a plant specimen collected in Taipei? What country do we put for that? As far as the breakup of the British Empire, that's a big one. After World War II, Britain was broke, and anti-colonial sentiment was only gaining steam. Sri Lanka was called Silau by the Portuguese Empire when it arrived in 1505, but was transliterated into English as Ceylon. So as a British crown colony, it was known as Ceylon. But it achieved independence in 1948, and it officially changed its name to Sri Lanka in 1978. So for you to do transcription, you have to know that. That's part of it. Colonial India, the breakup of that, it covers the modern territory of India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. So if you have something that is pre-1947 and it says India, you need to check to make sure what country you're actually in. And the final one we'll talk about is the Ottoman Empire. It doesn't look like much, but there is a lot going on here. This is a common bladder cynic collected at the cliffs near the Tomb of Kings in Jerusalem in 1906. Note that it's listed as the plants of Palestine, collected by J.E. Densmore. So, who was J.E. Densmore? He was born in Maine, and he moved to Jerusalem to join the American colony in 1898. He established the colony's herbarium, and he directed the colony's school. Please note that he has incredible style. Look at that hat. And his author abbreviation is Denzin. But okay, I've mentioned the American colony. What is that? For me to tell you the story of the American colony, that is a story that involves the 1871 Chicago fire, a shipwreck, a hippie commune of Swedish utopians, and the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. So, first off, Horatio Spafford and his wife Anna and his 4 girls, they lived in a suburb of Chicago when the Great Chicago Fire of 1871 hit. The fire burned upwards of 17,000 buildings, and it left over 100,000 people homeless. That family, Horatio Spafford and Anna, they spent the next 2 years working to help people that were left homeless. Burnt out and exhausted, the family booked passage on a luxury liner for a vacation in Europe. Horatio had business at the last minute that kept him, but Anna and the girls went on. And one night, the steamer collided with a sailing ship, which sank in minutes. Anna was recovered unconscious on a floating spar, but the girls were gone. When she landed in Cardiff, she cabled Horatio with a chilling message, "Saved alone, what shall I do?" Horatio made his way to his wife, and on the journey there wrote the hymn, "It is well within my soul." The members of the Spafford's congregation, the church that he helped build, turned against them, actually. And they said that the tragedies that the family faced were punishment for their sins. So Horatio left. He voted with his feet, and he decided to move to Jerusalem in anticipation of the second coming, which they believed was imminent as soon as 1881. The Jerusalem of 1881 was a sleepy backwater in a corner of the Ottoman Empire, population of about 8,000 people. If you look closely over on the corner, this is a map from 1883. You can see there is a Muslim quarter, a Christian quarter, an Armenian quarter, and a Jewish quarter. And the Spaffords, along with a few members of their congregation, rented a house in Old Jerusalem near the Damascus Gate. They were devout, but they weren't missionaries. They lived in a commune, officially and in all likelihood celibate, but there were accusations otherwise. And they spent their time in prayer and charitable work. By all accounts, they had good relationships with people of all faiths. Now, over time, the colony grew. They outgrew the house that they started in, and they bought a former palace built by Rabbi Daud Amin Effendi El Husseini that he had built for himself and his 4 wives. The colony grew with both American and Swedish expats, including Dinsmore, and they built medical clinics, orphanages, soup kitchens, schools, and a pediatric hospital. And they ultimately turned their villa into a hostel. It is currently a hotel that you can stay at today. It's still active, still in Jerusalem. You can stay there for about $300 a night. The thing that I like about these 2 photos are you can see the same fountain in the courtyard, both in left and right. And the right is a modern promotional photo from the hotel. The last story that I'll give you about the American colony. During World War I, the Ottoman Empire was part of the Central Powers. That's Germany, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, and Bulgaria. They were as opposed to the Allied powers, which was pretty much everyone else, as you can see there in blue. On December 9th, 1917, the Turkish governor of Jerusalem came to Anna Spafford and presented her with a bunch of flowers. "I am on my way to surrender the city," he said, "and I wanted you to be the first to know." She snatched a sheet from a bed in one of the colony hospitals and hurriedly affixed it to a pole to serve as a white flag with which to meet the advancing British army. That's the flag that you see over there on the right. And that flag is now in the Imperial War Museum in London. So, over the course of J.E. Dinsmore's life at the American colony in Jerusalem, and the specimen that was collected in 1909, Jerusalem was ruled by the Ottoman Empire, Britain, Jordan, and then finally Israel. The next thing we'll talk about is georeferencing. We have the image, the thing it's all transcripted, but the next step is to put a point on a map. So one thing we'll talk about with Grady Webster and the Harvard Mountaineering Club's expedition to Pakistan in 1955. I will read you a little bit from Exploring in the Karakoram, published in the American Alpine Journal in 1956. "We were an expedition of friends who had enjoyed previous mountaineering together. Dr. Grady Webster and Eugene Nasser from Pakistan joined us as a historical team. We decided not to attempt a major peak, but instead committed the expedition to a scientific program. This included a botanical study of the area, a physiological experiment, and the surveying and exploring of possible passes that might lead to the north of the Baltoro Rim. We were all thankful to touch down at the airstrip in Skardu after having seen the upper portions of the Nagar Parbat, Ragakashi, and the Haramash at close range, seemingly scraping our wingtips as we flew northwest up the Karen Valley to the Indus Gorge. By the first night, we had hired and paid off our first train of porters, and were beginning to feel like old hands at the game. But 5 days of repacking and negotiating for porters made us doubt this a bit. And when faced with 60 porters and 30 ponies strung out in a shouting, braying herd up the road to goal, we decided that there was much to be understood before we called ourselves experienced in these matters." So, who's Grady Webster? He was born in Ada, Oklahoma. He is a Texas's own, because he got his bachelor's in botany at UT, later a PhD in Michigan, and he got his fellowship at Harvard, which is why he was connected to the Harvard Mountaineering Club's expedition to Pakistan. contributed over 34,000 specimens, and he was the professor of botany at UC Davis. So what do we have on the label? How can we put a dot on a map from this? Well, okay, we have the upper end of the Hush Valley, Gondakoro Glacier Basin at the foot of the Mesherbrum, and we have the physical location of flats along a lateral moraine. We are fortunate that we have incredible tools now that we can find out where the heck this is, and then we can look at satellite imagery to find specific things that are mentioned in this label. So based on the information that we have, we can find that location to varying degrees of accuracy for all the locations on this expedition. We have a high school student, Ashlyn, who is working on exactly that, in fact. She will be transcribing and georeferencing the samples that we have from this expedition, so it will be possible to retrace their steps. So Ashlyn and our mentor, Ashley, here at Brett, have reached out to a whole bunch of institutions for additional information and color. It's kind of amazing who all they've reached out to. The Harvard Mountaineering Club, which is still around, the Grady Webster Archives at UC Davis, the Historical and Special Collections at the Harvard Law School Library, the Botany Club of Harvard, Botany Library at Harvard, and the Pakistan Agricultural Research Council National Herbarium, that was formerly the Stewart Herbarium at Gordon College. It is an incredibly cool project. At this stage in my life, I was mowing yards. And now we'll talk a little bit about Tomataro Makino. So glorious, luxurious, splendid, in full bloom, in full glory. So this is a sample from Tomataro Makino. He's one of the first botanists to work extensively on Japanese plants using a modern taxonomy. He is known as the father of Japanese botany. His birthday is celebrated as Botany Day in Japan. There's not a whole lot of information on this label other than the species name and a date. So interestingly, here we are in June 8th, 1941. And at this point, the Empire of Japan is still building the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere, which covered parts of China, Korea, and Southeast Asia. As far as Makino, the man, he was born in Kochi to a sake brewer family. He dropped out of school. He moved to Tokyo to study botany. And eventually he published an encyclopedia of botany. He had 13 whole kids. That's a whole mess. And his author abbreviation is Makino. This is, of course, not to be confused with Montaro Makino, who was also born in Kochi to a wealthy sake brewer family, and then dropped out of school to move to Tokyo to study plants and make an encyclopedia of botany. Montaro Makino is the similar but legally distinct protagonist of Japan Broadcasting Corporation's Ranman series. My understanding is that this is a big deal over there. He is played by Ryanosuke Kamiki, who has appeared in 7 of the 10 top highest growing Japanese films in Japan of all time. He is known as the 100 billion yen man for making a ton of money. The series has just finished its 130th episode in September 20th of this year. I love the title of the show, which is shown over in the corner, Ranman. Adjective for glorious, luxurious, splendid, in full bloom, in full glory. And that's what all of this stuff is. I have loved tripping over all of this glorious art history hidden in the margins of specimen labels. The collectors that we interact with here were real people with real stories. And these big movements in history, empires rising and falling, war, disaster, all that stuff is played out here in the herbarium if you stop to look. It's also little notes too, a hymn written in grief, a plant drawn with a brush in a cabin. Those are here too. So those stories are still relevant and they're far-reaching. And I hope that you have found their impact as interesting as I have. If this stuff sounds interesting to you, I hope that you will reach out. This is only the stuff that fell into my lap after a quick Google search, and who knows what else I'm going to find. As far as the talk, you never end a talk without a call to action. So here is my shameless plug for Lightscape. The reality is that it's a lot of fun and it's pretty great. Kids love it. It's wheelchair accessible, and there are s'mores available. It's great for everybody. If you're listening, you're probably already a member. So you should take advantage of that sweet discount and get some tickets. It supports the work we do here. This is a big revenue source for us, and it helps fund the gardens and the research. So if you like what we do, buy a ticket. Thanks a lot for your time. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Craig. I didn't want to blow everyone's eardrums, but I am clapping over here, and we have our folks in the PPS on site clapping for you. This was so freaking cool. And I'm kind of a little bit jealous. I mean, I only prep some material for you, but you get to be up close and personal with all of this stuff. Um, and it really is fascinating how much history and stories that the herbarium holds. It's not just dried plants sitting in a
No.
cabinet. There's a lot for us to discover, and we can only discover these things because we get these digitization grants. So we're pretty lucky. So there are some questions in the chat. Lots of applause for you, of course. Ale asked, how did you solve these historical challenges? Do you discuss with the group? What countries do you use? Have we narrowed down kind of what we've decided for, again, these historical changes and these country names that have changed and the boundaries, and it's not, I feel like there's not really a one answer. I feel like it's a case
No,
by case, but go ahead. Yeah.
no, it's absolutely case by case in terms of, I think that the what we've generally decided on is what's going to be the most useful for researchers, what's going to be the most common sense thing that researchers are going to be looking for. Um, ease of use is I think the most important thing that we should aim for.
Mhm.
And as far as Soviet satellites, like we can odds are good we can figure out the modern country. So
Yeah.
I hope that's answering your question.
Yeah, and I even think, we may just have to wait to get to the georeferencing point. I bet you there's going to come a time when we start georeferencing these that maybe the original country that we put in there, we find it actually wasn't actually collected there. So I think potentially getting to the georeferencing stage might help us with that a little bit. Um, yeah. Hi, Andrea. Andrea asked if that Randman series is available with English subtitles. Did you find where to stream?
I don't know. I don't know if it's out with English subtitles yet, but it is just released. Like it was, the last episode 130,
Wow.
was September 29th. So it has been ongoing. So as far as that, if it's been subtitled, I couldn't tell you.
So whenever I introduced you, I didn't mention that you have been a volunteer with us here for a few years now, and just started this position, but you had been imaging with us already. So I mean, you're kind of already a pro with imaging, but I guess my question is there, have you come across like a favorite species or family or something that you've enjoyed looking at while you've been imaging?
Tough to say. I'm working in the Rubicaceae right now, and there's some like those are neat. They are neat looking.
Yeah,
And I love some of the stuff from the Philippines. Like I said, some of that stuff it's big. It's
yeah,
huge. They look
yeah.
like they're from space. Here, hold on just a second. I'm upstairs with it right now.
Truly a behind the scenes. Here we go. Yeah, we've got some chunky specimens. And I think what Craig might be pulling out is that one of the pandanus.
Yeah,
Uh,
look at this thing. Look at this huge thing. What is this?
it's
It's
wild.
marvelous.
So you'll notice, yeah, that one had to be sewn on. There was no way glue was going to be keeping that attached to that sheet. Um, I guess I need to also ask, anyone on here, I know it's our probably a few of our armchair botanists that have been maybe skeletally transcribing our Asia specimens with us. I don't know if anyone in the audience wants to chime in on how that's been going, or if you have any questions about transcription. Or if you're new here and want to learn how to get involved, we can definitely send you to our crowdsourcing project where you can help us to transcribe some of our specimens. Since I'll wait for folks in the chat, or if you, I don't know, maybe you're able to unmute. We're small enough groups. If you want to unmute and chat, you can. And since this is also our final Armchair Botanist of the Year, I thought it would be wonderful to kind of give a recap of what all of our volunteers have helped to contribute digitization-wise. This whole year, we've had a few projects. We've done some Texas and Oklahoma work this year. We've Oh, Lauren Young, I know she's been transcribing a whole bunch with us this year. Lauren said, I've enjoyed the unexpected geography lessons via Google searches while transcribing. It is a lot of Google searching, I would say. Always having Google up or Google Maps up while transcribing these. So we've done Texas and Oklahoma this year. We've done a little bit of just our general collection. We've also done all Asia. And I was trying to get a better count of kind of what our numbers look like. The year's not over yet, and I'm still catching up. I know a few of you have been transcribing with us right now. So I'm caught up maybe to like this a week or so back. But I believe for skeletal transcription, so transcription that is the bare minimum, our scientific name and country, we've done over 133,000 this year. And so this is just the herbarium as a whole. It's pretty spectacular. And then I can give y'all the complete numbers in a second. So the complete transcription definitely takes a little bit longer, as y'all know. Over 33,000 records this year. So I just want to say thank you to all of you who have helped out, whether it's, you know, a handful here or there, or if you're Lauren Young and you transcribe while watching football. We seriously appreciate it. And I mean, again, you guys are kind of the first people, especially this all Asia material, looking at these specimens. So always feel free to flag any for us that you find are super interesting or unique, because we don't know what we have yet until we start digitizing these. Beth says, I love the backstories of the collectors as I've done transcriptions and looking forward to more as we get into georeferencing. This presentation is great. Thank you,
Thank you.
Beth. And thank you to everybody in the chat and for being here again today. We have a little bit more time. So if there are any more questions, we can answer them now. And if not, we can say goodbye for the year. And we hope you'll join us for our forums next year. We will not have one in January, but we will start back up in February. So be on the lookout for our webpage for those upcoming dates. And I'm going to send in the chat really quick the link to where you can find our past forums. So if you've missed any this year that you'd like to review and watch at your own time, I'm finding it right now. Hang tight. Here we go. Okay. So I'm sharing our botany research playlist for our Fort Worth Botanic Garden YouTube page. So on here, you'll not only see our Armchair Botanist forums, but you'll also see some of our lunchtime lectures too. So yes, and this will go on there eventually. Hey, Craig, I hope you're also viewing the chat.
Yes, thank you very much. Y'all are making me blush. Thank you.
Okay, you guys. Well, I am going to probably close us out for the year. Again, I appreciate all of you for, again, either contributing your time to transcribe with us or just being a participant in our forums. We've enjoyed having everyone this year and learning a lot this year. It's been really wonderful. Okay. Well, happy holidays, everyone, and happy New Year. We'll see you next year.